Chapter 4 of The Beautiful Mrs. Davenant by Violet Tweedale. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 4 Suspicion. Mrs. Davenant's simple avowal of her adoration of men produced a strong and lasting effect upon her select little audience. Indeed, it may be said to have supplied the keynote to the county's understanding of her individuality. Such remarks have a way of their own in spreading broadcast. This particular remark was like a pebble dropped in a pool. It sunk to hard bottom and sent out ripples towards the shores where crouched the harpies who batten on human wreckage. Those three simple little words became the pivot round which swung public opinion. As the Carletons drove home, they were at first very silent, both minds engrossed with the same conundrum. What did those words mean? Mrs. Carleton asked herself. What did they portend? They seemed to stand out in letters of fire and obliterate all other impressions. Was it merely a silly pose, or a throwing down of the gauntlet of defiance in the face of the county? Or again, was it nothing more than the innocent admission of a very simple woman? Mrs. Carleton reflectively stroked the backs of the roans with her whip. Then she shot a sidelong glance at her son, who appeared to have fallen into a brown study. Was Mabel Tadcaster right? Was Mrs. Davenant very attractive to men? Oh, undoubtedly. Conviction clutched at Mrs. Carleton's heart. What better means to emphasize her attractiveness could she have taken than in uttering those words, "I adore men"? And of course it was a stock phrase she used universally. Certainly myriads of women adored men. Why shouldn't they? But they didn't say it, or, here lay the core of the matter, if they did say it, they didn't look like that when they said it. Mrs. Carleton rather irritably flicked off a fly from the near roan's back, and the "thanks awfully" of the pair roused Claude. Rather jolly women, don't you think? I like 'em both. The mother detected just the faintest tinge of anxiety in her son's voice. She hastened to allay it. "Yes, so do I, immensely. They're a decided acquisition to the neighbourhood, and how good-looking they both are." Now there was distinct relief in Claude's happy little laugh. "By Jove, aren't they? And so well turned out. I like to see a woman very simply dressed in the country. And I like Mrs. Davenant particularly. She's so simple in herself." Mrs. Carleton winked her off eye and let her monocle drop. "Yes, isn't she? Perfectly simple. Refreshing, isn't it? That little remark about adoring men was delicious. Why shouldn't she adore men? I've always loved 'em. We'll agree on that point, anyway." Captain and Mrs. Hall did not discuss the situation on the way home, for the simple reason that the master insisted on driving his own car, a thing he very rarely did, having a profound contempt for man-made modes of locomotion. Sadie never drove in anything that had not a limousine top. The weather was never right for an open car. The sun was either too hot and the dust too thick, or the wind was too cold and the mud too liquid. She never permitted herself to be blown about in any other attire than in strictly orthodox riding kit, which so transformed her naturally elaborate appearance that she constantly escaped recognition. Indeed, she was generally known in the field by the horses she rode. "That's the master's high flyer. Mrs. Hall must be up," was a common enough remark heard at cover-side. At dinner, Captain Hall was well aware that Mrs. Davenant would be threshed out, and he appeared at the table in a very cheerful and conciliatory mood. "Well, Sadie, what's your paddock final on the ladies at Little Glentworth?" he inquired, dashing at once into the thick of things. What's yours?" retorted his wife pertly. Jim was in no way disconcerted. "Oh, I fancy they're all right, so far as one can judge. But a woman understands those sorts of things better than a man, I always think." His voice was careless and slightly patronising, and he did not specify what those sort of things were. He left that to the imagination. "Did you notice her pearls? They were real, and if there was one there were 50. Only half the rope showed, and the rest was tucked inside her gown." "Pearls? Whose pearls?" inquired the master, raising his boyish, innocent face. "Mrs. Davenant's, of course. I can't quite get to the rock bottom of her. Is she very deep or very shallow?" Jim Hall knew perfectly what was in his wife's mind. Those 3 little words, "I adore men." Well, no doubt the compliment was returned with compound interest. She was a stunning beauty, and a rattling good sort. He was sorry she didn't ride. There were so many little opportunities of being civil to women in the field, in which a master could indulge with perfect circumspection. However, there might be other opportunities. "Oh, rather too soon to form any definite conclusions on that point," he answered airily. "Miss Howard's a fine specimen of a has-been. Wonder why she never married." "I wonder why Mrs. Davenant never remarried." "Once bitten, twice shy," observed Jim foolishly. "That proverb never applied to any living soul over 10 years old," retorted Sadie with conviction. "When a woman's made a bad shot, she always wants to recover her losses. It's like playing at Monte. You know how we always try to get back. If I make a good shot, I always want to double it. Another thing, women are getting so much like men nowadays. They like variety." "Oh, my dear!" expostulated the master. Sadie laughed wickedly. "Well, don't men take what they like? No, there's some other reason why Mrs. Davenant remains a widow. When a man doesn't marry, it's because he's waiting for some other man to die. And when a woman doesn't marry, it's because she's waiting for some other woman to snuff. It doesn't always come off, of course. It's a pure gamble." "To which time has much to say," put in the master jauntily. "Oh, no, my dear. Age is merely a question of mental outlook," his wife assured him. "And really, if a woman makes a mistake in her second husband, she doesn't deserve to have lost her first." Thinking the matter over in bed that night, Jim came to the conclusion that Sadie had been very non-committal over the ladies of Little Glentworth. He was hanged if he knew what she thought of them. But he made up his mind he'd call in on his way home from shooting on the morrow and offer his services to Mrs. Davenant over the matter of hunters. Poor things, they had no man in the house, and it would be neighbourly to do what he could. He had picked up 1 or 2 quite decent mounts since his return. When Hilda Davenant and Agnes Howard found themselves once more alone that evening, a change crept over them both. That flashing smile, that gay air of content vanished, and the lovely face of Mrs. Davenant grew almost sombre. The sunset hour was past, and the fading light in the shadowy room seemed to reflect its pale melancholy on her thoughtful features. It was very quiet. The world seemed already to fold its hands in slumber. It was the hour which brought to Hilda Davenant revolt, not peace. "Nice people, nice, kindly disposed people," she soliloquized, and her low voice was a little tremulous. "What a type apart they are, those country-bred folk, with generations of fine tradition behind them. They are really the only gentle people left in England, and they'll die hard. The war has simply passed over their heads." Miss Howard was lighting a cigarette. She looked curiously at the idle attitude of her companion, half reclining on the sofa, her hands clasped behind her head. "Oh, don't forget that they and their retainers poured out their blood like water in the war," she demurred. "Isn't it natural that they desire to revert to 1914? I always felt sure they would. We were told there'd be an end to men servants. All that survive are back again in their old places. There were to be no more men selling ribbons and laces. Every shop swarms with them again, and never were there so many motor cars on the roads. Britain's one desire is to forget the war, to jazz it out of their minds and revert to pre-war conditions. Personally, I think they are wise. There's a deal of wisdom in the saying, "Let's eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die." Those who condemn it are those who can't follow it. Hilda seemed to be following the bent of her own thoughts rather than listening to her companion. What wonderful revelations there are in a woman's face. Life writes its biography there, and every face is a history in the making. The open street is a gallery telling the history of the noble and the mean, the sad and the joyous. What a smart, good-looking woman Mrs. Carleton is, a regular masher. "Oh, just what she isn't, my dear," retorted Miss Howard. "That get-up is only a signboard marked 'No road this way.' Once she must have been a wonderfully pretty woman. When she was widowed, I guess she adopted that dress to save trouble. She didn't want to marry again. She had her precious only son." Hilda gravely considered the subject for a moment. "The interesting point about masculine women is that it's impossible to imagine they ever were young. Effeminate men never seem to age." Agnes laughed. "Yet Mrs. Carleton was once young and was made love to. She's actually given birth to a male child." Hilda looked round. Her face was quite serious and deeply interested. "It does seem preposterous, almost indecent. And what a blessing the boy wasn't a girl. Now, I could imagine her laying an egg, as is the independent habit of some mateless fowls. But a son, and such a son. I'm sure her first question was, 'Colt or filly, doctor?'" "Oh, how can you be so flippant?" expostulated Miss Howard. "So you do admire the son?" "I admire them both immensely. If there was such a thing, which there isn't, I'd say he was a thoroughly English type, whose entire character rests on the noiseless conviction that he's a man and a gentleman." "Oh, a sort of John Bull?" Hilda shook her head. "No, J.B. belongs to the lower middle classes. He's a son of the soil. Major Carleton is very much lord of the manor, and he actually quoted poetry to me which wasn't Kipling. If I were writing a novel, I'd make him fall madly in love with the beautiful, mysterious widow. I'd love him passionately, divinely, and utterly blast his career by producing a husband who for years has been confined in a madhouse. I've often thought I'd write a novel on my own life. Not that there would be much novelty in it, except its truth." "You'd be quite safe. No one would believe it." "No," replied Hilda gravely. "You've got to imagine something quite inhuman if you want the critics to cry, 'How true to life!' As if anything was ever true to life. Life's as divergent as the human face, out of countless millions no two alike. Have you run across the parson yet?" "The parson?" echoed Agnes in a bewildered tone. Hilda waved an impatient hand. "Yes, the parson. How could there not be a parson in a scene like this? Why, he's as necessary to the picture as the village pond, and the ducks in the middle that stand on their heads, and the geese who are always so rude to strangers. I shall cultivate the parson." "Perhaps he won't be cultivated," suggested Agnes. "That won't matter or alter my determination. The very word cultivate means taking trouble and strict attention to detail. What's he like?" "One whom it would pay to cultivate. A splendid variety, Hilda, but don't overdo it." "My dear, if one means to do a thing, then either do it thoroughly or leave it alone. By the way, where is that silver-bound prayer book of mine with the long chain that hangs on the arm? I shall use it every Sunday. I wonder if Major Carlton and the master go to church and pray into their hats in the good old-fashioned way. I liked both these men. They're the clean-bred country type that has a real standard to live by. I sometimes think it's really rather wonderful how we get on so well in our manless existence." "We get on all right without men because we've got to," retorted Agnes dogmatically. "I fail to see the necessity." Mrs. Davenant's voice was dry. "We are really a triumph of art over nature, but sometimes I think we're rather foolish not to take some of the very tempting things that come along. Other women would." "Granted, we may be foolish to have no entanglements, but remember, it means freedom. It's better to live alone than in company with some solid facts I could mention. What a woman of moods you are! You were so gay and alluring this afternoon, and now you're so inconsistent." Mrs. Davenant shrugged. "Only the dead are consistent, and when one is either very happy, very miserable, or deeply in love, one has to be superlatively silly. I'm in that sort of humour that I could fall in love in a station waiting-room." Miss Howard was accustomed to Hilda's whimsies. "You're old enough to know better," she laughed. "Women are never any age till they cease to matter," she retorted. "And that's what nursemaids say to 3-year-old urchins who have got well astride a mud pie. I dare say I'm silly, but I'd rather be a foolish widow than a wise virgin any day. I'd like the Evening Post to bring me a letter beginning, 'Dearest woman in the world.'" "I should have thought that by now your appetite for such epistles would have become somewhat jaded," retorted Agnes dryly. Mrs. Davenant jumped up and walked to the window. Then she looked round. "You thought nothing of the sort, my dear, because you know as well as I do that there's no sound so enchanting as the crackle of a love-letter inside your corsets. You know that to every right-minded woman a love-letter is the best pick-me-up invented. It raises one's soul above even such sordid details as bills and the water rates. If I was Postmaster General, I'd institute a sacred delivery for love-letters and dress the postman like Cupid with wings." "And what would you do in a frost, Hilda?" "The supreme letter-writer is the lover," continued Mrs. Davenant, scornful of the interruption. "I've often heard that the most wonderful letters are written in lunatic asylums," persisted Agnes. "That's because the really sane people only are shut up. We who are at large are all mad on some things, and most of us on most things. Oh, how lovely it would be if I had a dearly beloved whom I knew was thinking of me and loving me from day to day. How heavenly to look forward to those hours when my lips would say all that my pen failed to express." "Do you feel lonely, Hilda?" Mrs. Davenant shook her head emphatically. "No, I've never felt lonely because I've dared to live. I happen to be dead at present, but if ever I do feel lonely, why, I shall come to life again and begin to live afresh." "It's getting late for such adventures," observed Miss Howard dryly. "It's getting late," echoed Hilda very gently, with reminiscence in her eyes. Then she flung out suddenly and impatiently, "Oh, women might really have a much better time if they weren't so wedded to lost opportunities." "And lost causes and half-forlorn hopes," put in Agnes quietly. "You said some little time ago that you'd finished with men, and that marriage was really throwing up the sponge and crying peccavi." "Oh, that was in a fit of boredom over Tristram, or was it Fielding? I really forget. What I'm sure I meant was that there is no bargaining with love. If a man isn't everything to a woman, then he's nothing. That's where I'm so handicapped. I dare not take everything which would include marriage." Agnes smiled rather bitterly. Marriage is so constantly a prison to a man and a workhouse to a woman. She never really knows what work means till she marries. "Oh, let's go for a stroll," suggested Hilda. You're in one of your love is a mere matter of liver moods. Let us tramp it off." End of chapter 4.